Hi, welcome to the Silent Avenger channel. If you're enjoying the content, please consider giving it a like and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive into today's story. I've been married to my wife Amanda for 15 years. On paper we have it all, a beautiful house, a solid financial foundation, and what everyone assumed was the perfect marriage. I thought so too, up until a few months ago. It started with small things. Amanda, who always used to check in throughout the day, suddenly became glued to her phone, texting late into the night with her screen tilted away from me. She started dressing differently, a little flashier, wearing perfume more often. She claimed it was just to feel good about herself. At first, I told myself not to overthink it, we're both busy professionals. But then, the excuses started piling up. Last-minute work events, unexplained absences, and a sense of emotional distance I couldn't ignore. I'll be honest, I tried to dismiss my gut feelings. Amanda's always been independent, and I didn't want to be the controlling husband who questions everything. But one night, I overheard her talking on the phone. Her voice was soft, flirty, almost like the way she used to talk to me when we first started dating. I didn't hear much, but one thing stuck out. She called the person Adam. That name meant nothing to me then, but it would soon. I decided to start paying attention, quietly. Amanda and I are creatures of routine, so it wasn't hard to notice when she started deviating from her usual patterns. She'd head out for errands that took hours longer than they should. One Saturday, when she said she was meeting a friend for lunch, I noticed her putting on way too much makeup for something casual. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. She'd locked it with a passcode she hadn't shared with me, but I saw enough notifications from Adam to raise my suspicions. At this point, I was spiraling between denial and fear. I wanted to confront her, but didn't know how to start. Instead, I decided to learn more. I Googled Adam's name and found out he's a real estate developer in the area. His social media painted the picture of a flashy, successful guy. Nice cars, exotic vacations, dinners at upscale restaurants, the whole living the dream package. If Amanda was drawn to excitement, this guy had it in spades. But instead of letting my emotions take over, I told myself to be strategic. I started noticing cracks in Amanda's lies and inconsistencies in her stories. I didn't say anything, just kept gathering bits and pieces of the puzzle. Every time she lied, I felt my heart break a little more, but I kept my poker face on. This is just the beginning. I don't know where this road will take me, but I'm determined to see it through. If nothing else, I want clarity, even if it hurts. After that first clue, Adam's name, my radar was up. I started observing everything, quietly piecing together what Amanda wasn't saying. I didn't ask her about the phone or her long errands. Instead, I started playing dumb, acting like nothing was wrong while keeping my eyes open. The first major red flag came a week later. Amanda claimed she had a girls' night with an old friend, Beth. Now, Beth and I aren't exactly close, but I know her well enough to check in without it seeming suspicious. I casually texted her, joking about their night out. Her reply: "Oh, I haven't seen Amanda in months. Why do you ask?" That hit me like a brick. I didn't let on to Amanda that I knew. Instead, I nodded along when she came home late, smelling like wine and wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The next morning, she was overly affectionate, like she was trying to overcompensate. It made my stomach churn. The following week, I noticed her taking more care with her appearance on random days. She bought new outfits and told me they were for work meetings. That was when I decided to dig deeper into Adam. A quick search of his real estate company revealed what I suspected. He wasn't as polished as his Instagram suggested. Several of his properties were under legal disputes, and reviews from clients were not great. I bookmarked everything. Amanda had no idea I was onto her. Every lie she told, I jotted down in my mind. I knew this wasn't the right time to confront her. If I jumped the gun, she might shut down, and I'd never get the full truth. I didn't just want answers. I wanted to understand why this was happening and figure out how to handle it without blowing up our lives. For now, I just kept playing my part, watching, listening, and waiting. The tension between us was growing, though Amanda probably thought she was hiding it well. She'd started avoiding long conversations with me, keeping everything surface level. When I'd ask about her day, her answers felt rehearsed. Then came an unexpected twist. Amanda invited me to a dinner party hosted by one of her work colleagues. She framed it as a networking opportunity for me, saying I could meet some potential business connections. I almost declined, but something about her insistence made me curious. I agreed, wondering if this colleague was Adam. When the night came, Amanda looked stunning, almost too stunning for a casual work event. I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach as we drove to the party. She was cheerful, talking about who I might meet, but her energy felt forced, like she was trying too hard to keep things light. When we arrived, I scanned the room, searching for a face that matched Adam's online photos. Sure enough, he was there, laughing loudly in a circle of people, dressed in an expensive suit that screamed, "Look at me." He didn't notice us at first, but Amanda's eyes went straight to him. It was subtle, just a flicker of recognition, but I caught it. Throughout the night, Amanda kept introducing me to people, but she was clearly distracted. Adam stayed on the other side of the room at first, but eventually, he made his way over. Amanda introduced us with a smile so bright it could have lit up the whole party. "Jason, this is Adam. He's a real estate developer I've worked with a few times." Adam extended his hand, his grin confident and a little too charming. "Nice to meet you, Jason. I've heard a lot about you." I shook his hand firmly, holding his gaze longer than necessary. "Likewise." The small talk that followed was surface level, but the undertone was anything but. He was smug, throwing in subtle digs about how stressful his work must be, how hard he works to juggle everything. Amanda looked uncomfortable, glancing between us, but I kept calm. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd rattled me. The moment solidified something for me. Adam wasn't just a passing fling. He saw himself as competition, and Amanda was the prize. But what he didn't know was that I was already steps ahead of him. After that dinner party, everything shifted. Amanda was more guarded, like she sensed I was paying attention. Adam, on the other hand, showed his cards without realizing it. His confidence at the party had been a performance. Beneath the surface, it was clear he wanted to seem like the alpha, but he didn't have the substance to back it up. I started digging deeper into Adam's business. It didn't take much to find the issues. Lawsuits from former clients, unpaid contractors, even a foreclosure notice on one of his properties. His luxury lifestyle was funded by debt, not success. I bookmarked everything, building a quiet arsenal of facts. Meanwhile, Amanda was becoming more inconsistent. One night, she claimed she had a late meeting at the office, but I knew her schedule didn't match up. So, I drove by her workplace. The building was dark, not a single car in the lot. I stayed for a while, waiting to see if she'd show up. She didn't. When she got home, I casually asked about her meeting. She rattled off some vague details, and I nodded along like I believed her. Inside, though, I felt my patience thinning. The lies were piling up, and I was starting to see her differently, not as the woman I'd spent 15 years building a life with, but as someone I didn't recognize. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted her to reveal herself completely before I made my move. So I kept my demeanor calm and supportive, even as she lied to my face. The next day, I scheduled a meeting with a private investigator. If Amanda and Adam thought I was just some clueless husband, they were about to be sorely mistaken. The meeting with the private investigator, Mark, was straightforward. I laid out everything I knew: Amanda's strange behavior, the text notifications from Adam, her suspicious absences. Mark nodded along, taking notes. "Do you have a recent photo of Adam?" he asked. I pulled up Adam's social media, showing him the carefully curated snapshots of luxury cars and upscale dinners. "This guy," I said. "He's the one." Mark studied the photos. These types are usually more bark than bite. Flashy lifestyle, but they're trying to keep the wheels from falling off behind the scenes. I smirked. "Exactly. I've already found some cracks. I just need you to confirm what I can't." Mark promised to be discreet. He'd follow Amanda's movements, look into Adam's day-to-day life, and report back anything useful. I left the office feeling strange, equal parts nervous and resolute. I hated that it had come to this, but I needed the truth. No more guessing, no more lies. A few days later, Mark called me. "I've got something," he said. My heart raced as I listened. Amanda had met Adam at a coffee shop on one of her so-called errand runs. Mark had snapped a few photos of them sitting close, their heads tilted together in a way that screamed intimacy. "That's not all," Mark added. "Adam's financial troubles are worse than you think. He's defaulting on a lot of loans, and one of his business partners recently pulled out of a major deal. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed gave me a sense of control. Keep digging, I told him. I need everything. That night, Amanda came home like nothing had happened, chatting about her day and asking about mine. I played along, but I couldn't shake the image of her sitting across from Adam, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. For now, I kept quiet. The pieces were falling into place, and soon, I'd have all the leverage I needed. A week after Mark's call, Amanda made her first noticeable mistake. She came home late, as usual, claiming she'd been at yoga with a friend. Her excuse might have worked, if she hadn't left her gym bag sitting by the door, untouched. I casually asked, "How was yoga? Was it a tough class?" She hesitated for a split second, then plastered on her usual smile. "Yeah, really intense. My legs are killing me." I glanced at the bag. "You left your gear in the car?" Her face faltered for the briefest moment before she said, "Oh, I didn't use it this time. They had spare mats, and I just went straight from work." It was a weak excuse, but I nodded along, pretending to believe her. Inside, though, I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. The next morning, Mark sent me a report. Amanda hadn't been at yoga. She'd met Adam at a bar across town, tucked into a corner booth where they likely thought no one would notice. Mark had photos again, Amanda leaning toward Adam, her hand brushing his arm. Later that day, Amanda brought up our upcoming anniversary. "We should go somewhere special this year," she said, almost as if she were trying to overcompensate. "Maybe a weekend in Napa?" I forced a smile, playing my role. "That sounds perfect." What she didn't know was that I'd already started working on my plan. With each lie she told, I felt my patience unraveling. But I wasn't going to explode or lash out. That's what they were probably expecting, a dramatic confrontation where everyone walks away hurt. Instead, I was going to play it smart, one step at a time. I was going to show Amanda exactly who Adam was without saying a single untruth. Sometimes, the truth is all you need to dismantle someone's fantasy. After Amanda's yoga lie and Mark's latest update, I knew it was time to take the next step. Confronting her outright wasn't my style, not yet. I wanted her to start questioning Adam on her own, to see the cracks I already knew were there. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One evening, while Amanda and I were having dinner, she brought up a new opportunity for me. "You should look into investing in real estate," she said casually. "It's so lucrative right now." I almost laughed. She was parroting Adam's world without realizing it. "Real estate's tricky," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "You really have to trust the people you're working with. A lot of developers are over-leveraged these days, taking on too much debt to fund projects that never pan out." She stiffened slightly, but kept her composure. "Well, the right partners make all the difference." "True," I said, pausing just long enough to let the moment hang. "I actually read about a developer recently. Big talker, but his business is falling apart. I think his name was Adam something." Her fork froze mid-air for a split second before she forced a chuckle. "Adam? That's pretty common. Probably just a coincidence." I shrugged, as if the conversation meant nothing to me. "Yeah, probably. Just thought it was funny how these flashy guys always seem to have skeletons in their closets." She changed the subject after that, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. I'd planted the first seed of doubt. A few days later, Amanda got a package delivered to the house while she was out. It was addressed to her, but from a boutique I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but this time curiosity got the better of me. Inside was an expensive watch, a men's watch, with a note that read, "For your big night, can't wait. A." My chest tightened, but instead of confronting her, I put the box back exactly as I found it and waited. That night, Amanda came home cheerful and upbeat, acting like everything was fine. When she noticed the package on the counter, she quickly scooped it up. "Oh, just something for work," she said lightly, not meeting my eyes. "Nice watch," I said casually. "Who's it for?" Her head snapped up, her expression briefly caught between panic and confusion. "Oh, it's for a retirement gift, my boss." I nodded, pretending to buy her story, though I could see her pulse ticking in her neck. The lies were becoming easier for her to tell but harder for her to keep straight. That night, while she showered, I sat on the bed, scrolling through my notes on Adam. I wasn't just gathering facts for my sake, I was preparing to hand them to Amanda at the exact moment she'd need to see them most. She didn't know it yet, but her house of cards was starting to crumble. And I wasn't going to push it over, I was going to let it fall all on its own. After the watch incident, Amanda became harder to read. She seemed more cautious, almost like she was waiting for me to confront her. But I didn't. I kept playing my part, being the supportive, trusting husband, while inside, my resolve hardened. Mark called me a few days later with more updates. Adam's financial situation is worse than we thought, he said. One of his properties is in foreclosure, and it looks like another deal he's been working on is falling apart. He's scrambling to keep up appearances. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. And Amanda? She met him again. This time, at a hotel bar downtown. I got photos, but nothing explicit. They talked for a while, then she left alone. Hearing that she'd left alone was a small relief, but it didn't change what I already knew. This wasn't just a fling for her, it was emotional. That almost made it worse. I thanked Mark and hung up, staring at the pictures he'd emailed me. Amanda and Adam, sitting close, their heads tilted toward each other like they were sharing secrets. She looked happy. Happier than she'd looked with me in months. Later that week, I decided to test Amanda's loyalty to her lies. Over dinner, I casually mentioned, I ran into someone at the coffee shop today. Said he knew you. Adam something. Small world, huh? Her fork slipped from her hand, clattering onto the plate. Adam, she repeated, trying to sound casual but failing. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone light. I didn't catch his last name. Real estate guy. Seemed like a big personality. Amanda forced a smile, but her discomfort was obvious. Oh, Adam. Yeah, he's just someone I've worked with a couple of times. No big deal. Funny, I said, leaning back in my chair. He seemed to know a lot about you. Her smile faltered, and she quickly busied herself with clearing the table. He's just friendly like that. Always exaggerates. I let the conversation drop, but I'd made my point. Amanda knew I was paying attention, and it was making her nervous. The following weekend, Amanda told me she was going to spend the afternoon shopping with her sister. Her tone was too chipper, her explanation too rehearsed. I didn't believe her for a second. As soon as she left, I texted Mark, asking if he was available to follow her. It didn't take long for him to reply. She's not shopping, Mark said when he called me an hour later. She's at a restaurant with Adam. Private booth. Looks cozy. I felt the familiar churn of anger in my stomach, but forced myself to stay calm. Just keep me updated, I said. By the time Amanda got home, I had already received the photos. She was cheerful, telling me about the great deals she'd found and how much fun she had with her sister. I nodded along, pretending to listen, but inside, my anger was building. She leaned over to kiss my cheek, and I caught the faintest trace of cologne, something I didn't wear. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to confirm what I already knew. That night, while Amanda slept peacefully beside me, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was the way she was trying to keep me in the dark while playing house. I wasn't going to let this go on much longer. I'd gathered enough evidence to expose the truth, and soon, Amanda would have no choice but to face it. But I wasn't going to explode or accuse her outright. No, I was going to do this on my terms, in a way that would make her see the reality she was trying so hard to ignore. Because as much as it hurt, I wasn't just fighting for my pride, I was fighting for the life we'd built, and maybe, just maybe, for the woman I thought I knew. The day after her shopping trip, I decided to subtly turn up the pressure. If Amanda wanted to keep lying, I was going to make it harder for her. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned a real estate deal I'd read about in the news, one that had gone belly up, leaving the developer scrambling to recover. They make it look so glamorous, I said, sipping my coffee. Big houses, fancy cars. But a lot of those guys are just one bad deal away from losing it all. Amanda didn't look up from her plate, but I noticed her hands tense around her fork. Yeah, I guess it's a tough business, she said, her tone too measured. Must be, I replied. That Adam guy you worked with, does he ever talk about stuff like that? I imagine it's hard to stay afloat. Her reaction was exactly what I'd expected, a quick flash of irritation, followed by an overly casual shrug. I wouldn't know. We don't really talk about his business. Lie. That afternoon, I called Mark again. I wanted more details, not just about Amanda but about Adam's life. Find out what Amanda's buying into, I told him. I want to know what kind of fantasy he's selling her. Mark came through, as always. A few days later, he sent me a file packed with information. Adam's debts were staggering. He'd taken out multiple high-interest loans to fund his projects, most of which were failing. His luxury cars? Leased. His house? On the verge of foreclosure. But what caught my attention most was his personal life. Adam had a history of short-lived relationships, most ending in some kind of drama. His charm was his weapon. He swept women off their feet, only to leave them picking up the pieces when things fell apart. I started seeing the pattern, and it clicked. Amanda wasn't just cheating, she was chasing excitement, trying to recapture some version of herself she thought she'd lost. And Adam, with his big promises and flashy lifestyle, was the perfect escape. I didn't confront Amanda that week. Instead, I started planting more seeds. One night, while we were watching TV, I casually asked, "Do you ever feel like people put on a show for social media? Like they want everyone to think their life's perfect, but it's really just smoke and mirrors?" She glanced at me, her expression guarded. "I guess some people do." "Why?" "Oh, no reason," I said. "Just feels like it must be exhausting, keeping up appearances all the time. Eventually, something's gotta give." She didn't respond, but I saw the flicker of discomfort cross her face. The following weekend, Amanda said she was heading out for another girls' night. I didn't even ask for details this time. I already knew where she'd be. Mark sent me the update a few hours later, Amanda and Adam, meeting at a wine bar downtown. But this time, something was different. Adam didn't look confident or charming. He looked stressed, constantly checking his phone and running his hands through his hair. Amanda, on the other hand, was all smiles, leaning in close, clearly hanging on his every word. She couldn't see the cracks forming in his polished exterior, but I could. When she got home, I asked how her night was. She told me all about how much fun she'd had with her friends, laughing and carrying on like nothing was wrong. But things were wrong, she just didn't know it yet. Because the next time she lied, I was going to be ready. By now, Amanda was living two lives, her comfortable, stable life with me and the exciting, chaotic one with Adam. What she didn't realize was that the walls between those two worlds were starting to close in. A few days after her girls' night, Amanda seemed distracted, like she was carrying the weight of something heavy. I noticed her checking her phone more than usual, her face tightening every time a notification popped up. "Everything okay?" I asked one evening, feigning concern. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before forcing a smile. "Yeah, just work stuff. Nothing to worry about." I nodded, playing along, but I could tell she was unraveling. Mark's updates were becoming more revealing, especially about Adam's spiraling situation. His flashy lifestyle was beginning to crumble under the weight of his financial problems. One of his biggest deals, a property development that he'd been hyping up for months, had just fallen apart due to lack of funding. Amanda, of course, had no idea. To her, Adam was still the picture of success, a confident man who could offer her the excitement she thought she was missing. But that illusion wouldn't last long. The turning point came when Amanda accidentally left her phone on the counter while she stepped out to grab something from her car. A message from Adam popped up on the screen. "We need to talk. Urgent." I stared at it for a long moment, my chest tight with a mix of anger and grim satisfaction. It was clear that whatever fantasy they'd built together was starting to crack. When Amanda came back inside, she quickly grabbed her phone, her face unreadable. "Did you need something?" she asked, her tone light but cautious. "Just making coffee," I said, keeping my expression neutral. That night, Mark called with a new update. "Adam's running out of options," he said. "He's trying to salvage his failing projects, but no one's biting. It looks like he's been reaching out to Amanda for support, not just emotional, but financial." I froze. "Financial?" "Yep," Mark said. "There's no solid proof yet, but from what I've seen, he's dropping hints, trying to rope her in. My guess? He's banking on her to bail him out." I clenched my jaw, the anger simmering just below the surface. Adam wasn't just charming Amanda, he was grooming her to become his safety net. The next day, Amanda was quieter than usual, her usual cheerful facade replaced by something more subdued. As we sat down for dinner, I decided to test the waters again. "You seem off," I said casually. "Something on your mind?" She shook her head quickly. "No, just tired. Long day." I gave her a small smile. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." You don't have to carry everything alone. Her eyes flickered, a brief flash of guilt crossing her face before she nodded. Thanks, Jason. That was all I needed. Amanda was feeling the strain, and so was Adam. And soon, the weight of their choices would come crashing down. Because I wasn't just waiting for the truth anymore, I was preparing to drop it on them myself, in a way they'd never forget. The next week, Amanda's behavior became increasingly erratic. She seemed on edge, distracted by something she wasn't ready to share. She spent more time texting in the other room, taking calls outside, and offering even vaguer excuses for her absences. But I wasn't pressing her. Not yet. Mark's updates painted a clearer picture of Adam's desperation. The man was falling apart. His largest project was officially bankrupt, and creditors were closing in. He'd started selling off his possessions. His luxury car was gone, replaced with something modest. Social media posts about living the dream had dwindled, replaced by motivational quotes that screamed, "I'm barely holding it together." One night, Mark sent me a batch of photos that made everything even clearer. Amanda and Adam had met at a park, sitting on a bench under the shade of a tree. From the angle Mark had taken, their conversation looked tense. Adam's hands moved animatedly, his face etched with frustration, while Amanda sat rigid, her expression caught somewhere between shock and doubt. When Amanda came home that evening, she looked drained. I asked her how her day was, and she mumbled something about work being overwhelming. It wasn't even a convincing lie anymore. I decided to lean in. "If you're stressed, maybe we should plan a getaway," I said, keeping my tone light. "Just you and me. We could use the time together." Her reaction was immediate, a flicker of panic before she forced a smile. "That sounds nice," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I let it drop, but inside, I knew the walls were closing in on her. She couldn't keep up the double life for much longer, not with Adam scrambling to pull her deeper into his mess. The next day, Mark confirmed my suspicions. Adam had been asking Amanda for money. Nothing overt, but through subtle hints about how tough times had hit his business and how support from someone who believes in him could help him get through it. Amanda hadn't given him anything yet, not money at least, but she hadn't shut him down, either. That night, I put my next move into motion. While Amanda was in the shower, I printed out some of Mark's findings: Adam's bankruptcy filings, the foreclosure notices, screenshots of his property lawsuits. I slipped them into a manila folder and placed it in my office drawer, waiting for the right moment. The moment came sooner than expected. A few days later, Amanda and I were having dinner when she finally broke her silence. "Jason," she started, her voice hesitant. "I've been thinking, maybe we should talk about diversifying our investments." I set my fork down and leaned back, giving her my full attention. "What do you mean?" "Well," she said, avoiding my eyes, "real estate can be a great opportunity, and I know someone who could help us get started." I stared at her, my expression calm but unreadable. "Adam," I said flatly. Her head shot up, her eyes wide. "What? No, why would you say that?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm under my gaze. "Amanda," I said finally, my tone soft but firm, I know. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. But then she looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "It's not what you think," she said quietly. "Then why don't you tell me what it is?" I asked, my voice calm but carrying an edge that made it clear I wasn't playing games anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a single folded sheet of paper, one of Mark's photos of her and Adam at the park. I slid it across the table. Amanda stared at it, her face crumpling. "Jason, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said, leaning forward. "But before you do, you should know I've been patient. I've given you every opportunity to be honest. And instead you've lied to me over and over." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't stop. "I know about Adam," I continued. "I know about the meetings, the messages, the money he's trying to get from you. I know everything, Amanda. So if you're going to explain, I suggest you start with the truth." She didn't answer right away, tears slipping down her cheeks as she stared at the photo. Finally, she whispered, "It wasn't supposed to go this far, but it had." And now, there was no turning back. Amanda sat across from me, gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her tears came silently at first, but the weight of my words seemed to crush her. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she repeated, her voice barely audible. "Then how far was it supposed to go?" I asked, my tone sharper now. "You lied, Amanda. You lied to my face for months." She wiped her face with shaking hands. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jason. I swear." I cut her off, my patience finally slipping. "You didn't mean to hurt me? Do you even hear yourself? Do you think I don't know what's been happening? I've seen you with him, Amanda. I know about the hotel bar, the park, the wine bar. I know he's been asking you for money because his entire life is a facade. So tell me, what was your plan? Were you going to drain our savings to fund his sinking ship?" Her head snapped up, shock flashing in her eyes. "No. I would never," she stopped, like the weight of her own lie was too much to bear. I don't know what I was thinking." "That's the first honest thing you've said tonight," I said bitterly. After a few moments of silence, she finally began to talk. Her words came in a flood, spilling out in fragments as she tried to explain. "It wasn't about the money," she said, her voice cracking. "At first, it was just someone paying attention to me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. He was exciting, confident, and I felt alive again. But I didn't realize how far it had gone until I was in too deep." I leaned back, arms crossed. "And what did you feel with me? Because from where I'm sitting, I've done nothing but provide a stable, loving home for us. I've been here, Amanda. I've always been here. But you went looking for something else anyway." She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I was stupid, Jason. I didn't realize how much I'd taken for granted. I thought maybe Adam could offer me something I was missing, but I see now that it was all a lie. He's a mess. He doesn't have anything real to offer me, or anyone else." I stared at her, my emotions swirling between anger and disbelief. "So now you're done with him? Now that you see he's a fraud, you think you can just come back and pretend like none of this happened?" "I don't want him," she said desperately. "I never really did. I was just caught up in something I didn't know how to stop." I stood up, pacing the room as she cried. Her words might have been honest, but they felt hollow to me. "What do you expect me to do with this, Amanda? Do you think an apology will fix what you've broken?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I don't want to lose you, Jason. I know I messed up. I know I've hurt you. But I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Please just don't give up on us." Her words hit me like a brick. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her it was too late, that she destroyed everything we'd built. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, despite everything, hesitated. I sat back down, staring at her for a long moment. "Here's the thing, Amanda. You don't get to decide how this plays out. I do. You've lied, you've betrayed me, and now you're begging for forgiveness because your fantasy didn't pan out. But forgiveness isn't something you can demand. It's earned." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll earn it. I swear, Jason, I'll do whatever it takes." I didn't respond. Instead, I got up and walked out of the room, leaving her sitting at the table with the weight of her choices hanging over her. Because while she might have been ready to fight for our marriage now, I wasn't sure I had any fight left in me. The day after our confrontation, Amanda was unusually quiet. She didn't try to defend herself anymore or bring up what had happened at dinner. Instead, she tiptoed around me, as if afraid that anything she said might push me further away. I let her sit in her guilt. I needed time to think, and I wasn't about to make this easy for her. But Adam wasn't staying quiet. Mark called me that afternoon with an update. "Adam's in free fall," he said. "One of his last projects just officially collapsed, and from what I can tell, he's desperate for cash. He's been trying to get Amanda to meet him again, multiple messages, late-night calls. He's not letting up." I clenched my jaw, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Do you know if she's responded?" Mark hesitated. "Not yet. But she's reading the messages. I can tell you this much, Adam's not going to take no for an answer. He's banking on her bailing him out, Jason. He's got no one else to turn to." Hearing that was like gasoline on the fire that had been burning in me since this started. Adam wasn't just a liar, he was a parasite, trying to leech off Amanda while dragging her down with him. I thanked Mark and hung up, my mind already racing. If Adam thought he could keep using Amanda as his safety net, he was about to learn the hard way just how wrong he was. That evening, Amanda's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was upstairs. I glanced at the screen, and there it was, another message from Adam. "Please, Amanda. I just need a little help. You're the only one I can trust." The audacity of it made my blood boil. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. Instead of confronting Amanda about it, I left the message unread and put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. When Amanda came back downstairs, she seemed nervous, her eyes flickering toward her phone. She picked it up, hesitating before unlocking it. "Everything okay?" I asked, my tone casual. She froze, glancing at me with a forced smile. "Yeah, just work stuff." I nodded, not pushing further. I wanted to see what she'd do next. The next day, Mark sent me another set of photos. Adam had been spotted at a local coffee shop, pacing back and forth while on the phone. His expression was frantic, his movements agitated. Mark had captured part of the conversation on audio, and it confirmed what I already suspected. "I'm running out of options," Adam had said. "I just need her to trust me one more time." Her. Amanda. It was clear that Adam wasn't going to stop until he got what he wanted. But I wasn't about to let him. That night, I made my move. Over dinner, I brought up Adam again, this time more directly. "Does Adam seem desperate to you?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Amanda froze mid-bite, her fork hovering in the air. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "I just can't shake the feeling that he's not as put together as he likes to seem. You know, with all the flashy cars and big talk, it makes you wonder what's really going on behind the scenes." She set her fork down slowly, her expression guarded. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because I know he's been messaging you," I said bluntly. "Asking for help." Her face went pale, and she opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. "Don't lie to me again, Amanda," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know everything. I know he's in debt, I know he's trying to use you, and I know you've been reading his messages. So let me ask you this, are you going to let him drag you down with him?" Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment, I thought she might try to deny it. But then she broke, her voice trembling as she said, "No. I'm done with him, Jason. I swear. I haven't responded to him. I was just afraid. Afraid of what you'd think, afraid of how much I've already messed up." I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of deception. "Then prove it," I said. "Show me that you're done. Block him. Right here, right now." Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, scrolling to Adam's name. She hesitated, tears spilling down her cheeks, before finally pressing the button to block him. "It's done," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, my expression unreadable. "We'll see." Because while she might have taken the first step, I wasn't sure it was enough. Adam wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily, and Amanda wasn't the kind of woman who'd proven she could resist him. Not yet. For the next few days, things were quiet, too quiet. Amanda was still walking on eggshells around me, keeping her distance unless I initiated conversation. I noticed her phone stayed in her bag more often, but I wasn't naive enough to assume she'd suddenly become transparent. Blocking Adam was a start, but I knew he wouldn't disappear without a fight. Sure enough, Mark called me on a rainy Thursday afternoon with news. "Jason, Adam's trying to reach her another way. He showed up at her office today." I gripped the phone tighter. "What happened?" "He didn't make a scene," Mark said. "He waited outside the building for over an hour. Eventually, she came out, and they talked in the parking lot. From what I could see, it was heated. She didn't seem happy to see him. Did she leave with him?" "No. She walked away, and he didn't follow. But I'd bet anything he's not done." I exhaled slowly, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "Send me the pictures," I said. Within minutes, they were in my inbox. Adam standing by Amanda's car, gesturing animatedly. Amanda standing stiff, her arms crossed, her expression torn between frustration and guilt. When she came home that evening, I was waiting for her in the living room. She walked in, rain dripping off her coat, and froze when she saw me sitting there, holding my laptop with the photos open on the screen. "Rough day?" I asked, my tone calm but edged with steel. Her eyes flickered to the laptop, and her face went pale. "Jason, I can explain." I closed the laptop and set it aside. "Then explain." She hesitated, biting her lip like she was weighing her words. He showed up uninvited. I didn't ask him to come, I swear. He was just there when I left work. And he said he needed to talk. That he's in trouble and has no one else to turn to. I told him I couldn't help him and that he needed to leave me alone. Did you? I asked, my eyes locked on hers. Did you tell him to leave you alone? Yes, she said firmly, tears brimming in her eyes. I told him I was done, Jason. That I can't do this anymore. I walked away. Her answer sounded sincere, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down. Do you think that's the end of it? She looked down, shaking her head. No. He's persistent. That's one word for it, I said bitterly. The next morning, I took matters into my own hands. I called Mark and asked him to dig deeper into Adam's movements. I wanted to know exactly where he was, what he was doing, and whether he had plans to contact Amanda again. By midday, Mark had an update. Jason, he's not giving up. He's been trying to call her from different numbers, blocked numbers, even. And I've tracked him to a bar near her office. He's waiting, probably hoping to catch her during lunch. I clenched my jaw, my anger finally boiling over. Send me the address, I said. You sure about this? Mark asked. Absolutely. When I arrived at the bar, I spotted Adam immediately. He was sitting in a corner booth, hunched over his phone, looking far less confident than he had at the dinner party where we'd first met. His tailored suit was gone, replaced by a wrinkled shirt and an air of desperation. I walked straight up to him, my presence catching him off guard. He looked up, his face paling as recognition dawned. Jason, he said, trying to muster his usual charm. This is a surprise. Not really, I said coolly, sliding into the booth across from him. He shifted uncomfortably, his bravado faltering. Look, if you're here to talk about Amanda. I'm here to talk about you, I cut him off. About how you've been harassing my wife, showing up at her office, calling her non-stop. It ends today. Adam smirked, though it lacked conviction. You're awfully confident for a guy whose wife was looking elsewhere for excitement. I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. You think you're clever, don't you? Flashing your rented cars, bragging about your failing business. Amanda might have fallen for your act, but I see right through you. You're a fraud, Adam. And now, you're a desperate fraud. His smirk disappeared, replaced by anger. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, I said, pulling out a folder and sliding it across the table. Inside were all the documents Mark had gathered, foreclosures, lawsuits, debt records. This is who you are. And now Amanda knows it too. He stared at the folder, his confidence crumbling. So what? You think this scares me? No, I said, standing up. But it should. Before I walked away, I leaned down and added, stay away from my wife, Adam. You've already lost, and if you push this any further, you'll regret it. As I left the bar, I felt a surge of resolve. Adam's grip on Amanda was slipping, and I was making sure he couldn't sink his claws into her again. But there was still one question left to answer. What would Amanda choose now that she had no illusions left to cling to? That evening, Amanda came home to find me waiting at the kitchen table. She looked exhausted, her eyes red like she'd been crying all day. I didn't waste time. I saw Adam, I said, my voice calm but firm. Her head snapped up, panic flashing across her face. What? When? Today. I made it clear that he's done inserting himself into our lives. I gave him every reason to stay away from you. Amanda sat down slowly, her hands shaking as she fiddled with the edge of her sweater. Jason. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never should have let it get this far. I didn't see it until now, but Adam was just using me. I was so stupid. I leaned forward, my tone sharp. Stupid isn't the word for it, Amanda. You lied to me, you betrayed me, and you let someone like Adam manipulate you. So now I need to know, what are you going to do about it? She broke down, sobbing into her hands. I want to fix this, Jason. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I'll go to therapy, I'll be transparent, I'll do anything. Just don't give up on me, please. Her words sounded sincere, but I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood, looking down at her. It's not just about what you say, Amanda. It's about what you do. Prove to me that you're willing to fight for this marriage. Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm willing to fight for it anymore. Her sobs grew louder, but I turned and left the room. I needed space, And I needed time. Because while I'd exposed Adam for the fraud he was, the bigger question was whether I could ever see Amanda the same way again. The choice wasn't just hers to make, it was mine too. And I wasn't sure what that answer would be yet.